back to the Keeping the Dream Alive podcast. Today, I have the opportunity to sit down with Cindy Walz today to talk a little bit about vesting and diversification. Before we get started talking about that topic, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work you do here at Torch?
Yeah, Clark, that would be great. So my name is Cindy Walz. So I am actually I started the company in 2017, and I'm the CFO of Torch Technologies and Starfish Holdings. So
Awesome.
Basically the finance and accounting part of the company.
Yeah, and the company's, even though since 2017, the company's grown a ton.
Oh, amazing.
Adding a bunch of different sort of legs to the company that kind of probably keeps you busy on a daily basis, making sure everything is running and operating smoothly as the company continues to grow. With the topic of vesting and diversification, let's just start off by talking a little bit about what is vesting and how long does it take to become fully vested?
Okay, so the ESOP, in some respects, it's an ERISA plan. It's a retirement plan, so it works very much like your 401k. So most employees are familiar with the 401k because that's been around for a long time, and people have invested in a 401k at various companies that they've been at. So the ESOP works similarly. So just like in the 401k, you have a vesting schedule. The ESOP has a vesting schedule. What does that mean? It means that gradually over time, the money becomes yours. So whenever you start out and you're investing your funds into it, the company's giving you a match or the company's giving you a contribution in the case of an ESOP. And so 20% per year, the money becomes yours. So it goes into your account, you see it in your statement, but it does not vest and become yours until the end of each of those periods, 20% progressively over 5 years. So if you left the company, instead of getting the amount that's on your statement, you would get a reduced amount, which is whatever the vesting amount is that has become your actual physical funds.
Yeah. And so is there an immediate sort of correlation between as the vesting begins, as a new employee comes on, to like seeing that come on in their statement, or when does it really kind of solidify to themselves? So we talk a lot about it on the podcast of, when can you see that being an employee owner is different than being at another company that maybe isn't an employee owned company? Like when does that sort of sink in typically for an employee?
Really, the financial aspect of that, there's some time related to that. Unlike a 401k where you can go see your account every single month, you log into Fidelity or Principal or wherever your 401k is, and you see those balances every single month. An ESOP is an annual process. So you could literally start the company in January of 2025, and you do not see your first statement for the ESOP until sometime over in March or April of 2026.
Wow.
And I know that's confusing for some employees because they're coming from 401ks or they're coming from an environment where they're used to looking at funds monthly. But an ESOP works somewhat differently. You have to see what the performance of the company is, what the contribution into the accounts looks like before you can create those statements for the employee. More importantly, you have to do a valuation for the company to see, okay, what is the company worth today? And what is the share price for the company? Yeah.
And so you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but just say an employee is here for 5-6 years, and then they've kind of become it's before they are fully vested, or maybe they've already become fully vested, but then they decide to leave. What does that process look like on your end, and what does that look like for the employees themselves?
Well, for the employee, they terminate the company and they turn in a 2-week notice and they're going to depart. Again, it's an annual process. So it's not like you depart and in 2 weeks you get a check. You're going to get your PTO paid out, but you're not going to get a check for the ESOP. It's going to take a minute for us to go through the full annual cycle to get a valuation of the company, to get your account calculated, to figure out what your funds are, to understand what your vesting is based on, your years of service. And then we will contact you and say, where do you want your funds to go? There'll be a distribution that occurs, and we'll reach out to you and say, how do you want your funds distributed? Is that a rollover? A rollover that works similar to a 401k? We can just roll it into a 401k for you, so that you do not lose the pre-tax advantage of those funds.
Gotcha. And so kind of moving now into talking a little bit about diversification. I mean, there's a lot of different elements that kind of go along with what we talked about on the podcast all the time with the ESOP and the different ways to vest and the employee buyback and all the different things that you can do. Talk a little bit about why diversification is important and what is diversification.
Well, diversification is actually a matter of law. The Department of Labor requires that a company provide statutory diversification for their employees. Now, why is that? Well, because, as an employee gets more years of service and more years of experience with the company, They're getting older.
Mm.
You don't want to be in a situation as you're heading towards retirement and all of your funds are in one stock. All your eggs are in one basket.
Yeah.
It's probably not a good idea. Most financial analysts would tell you at some point in your life cycle and career life cycle, you should make sure that whatever retirement funds you have, that they are diversified and that you have a balanced, diversified portfolio. Same thing applies for an ESOP. If you spend your entire life and your entire career at Torch, which would be great, right? We're looking for a retirement journey here. But if you did, at some point you look at that and you go, okay, I'm very heavily invested in Torch stock and I may have limited retirement funds anywhere else. So at that point, financial advisor, you yourself may look at that and go, I need to diversify. Department of Labor requires that at age 55 and 10 years in our plan, for the next 55 to 60, you have a period of time where you, by law, are allowed to diversify your account. And then we offer additional diversification processes as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm thinking kind of as new employees come into working at Torch and, maybe they're unfamiliar with what an ESOP is or unfamiliar with some of the terms that we've talked about. It's a lot of it's education on this end. And this is kind of what this podcast is to educate them. What would you want them to know if they're coming right out of college, this is their first job, and kind of the value of the ESOP, the value of vesting, and the value of diversification?
Yeah, well, number one, if you're starting with Torch, I would heavily encourage you to go to the ESOP basics class because it's going to tell you everything you need to know about ESOP, what it is, how it works, how it functions, why it's beneficial to you. But, at the end of the day, the ESOP is a retirement plan. So it helps build wealth. So at some point in your future, whether that be a full retirement age or a younger retirement age, you're going to have the funds to go retire and do what you want to do. Buy the boat, move to the beach. Travel the world, whatever it is that your desires are. So the ESOP builds gradual wealth. It starts from the beginning with the first contribution the company puts in for you and grows over time. So what do? You work really hard, make your customers happy. You do great technical work. You work collaboratively and cooperatively with the rest of the team in order to grow the company. As the company grows, your ESOP balance grows.
And so how is diversification, as we talked about kind of the benefits for the employee, what is the diversification benefits for maybe the ESOP as a whole?
Well, you can imagine if an ESOP is sitting there and the balances are growing, at some point the company has to buy those out. There is no public market for the stock of the company. So when a person gets ready to retire, their account has stock in it. The stock has a value. The company's the buyer. So whenever you get ready to cash out and you want to leave to go do your world travels, then the company has to buy your funds back, and that's called repurchase commitment. And so you can imagine as those accounts grow and balloon, they can get quite hefty. And if you had an entire population of employee owners retire at the same time, well, that could be a pretty big number, but the company has to pay those out. And the company has built great plans in order to meet that repurchase commitment and pay that out. But it's a good idea for both the employee to be able to initiate diversification and do the diversification. It's also a good idea for the company to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. And so as we're sitting here kind of finishing out the first quarter of the year, what are you looking forward to most for Torch as it continues to grow, as your role continues to grow here at Torch, kind of handling all the different legs of the businesses that are here? What are you looking forward to most as 2025 continues to move along?
Well, what exciting times for the company. You've got Freedom Real Estate that has now become a construction company. We've got a couple of projects underway, both with Hayes Farm as well as the Pulaski Pike property. So that's pretty exciting for us to move into the development phase and construction phase of the company. Torch Technologies continues to hum along. It's doing great. Customers, are getting everything they need from us. More importantly, the warfighter is supported. So if we have boots on the ground in a foreign soil, we hope that we're making a difference and we're adding value to that person and we're bringing them home. And that's the entire objective of the company.
Yeah.
So the exciting things is just to see where does Torch, and Symvana, I mean, where does it go next? What does the growth path look like for 2025, and where do we move to? And my goodness, what are we going to be doing next?
Yes.
Exciting.
I feel like
times.
all the conversations on here, we always talk about what's next. And I think, we had Brad Walker on at the beginning of the year talking a little bit about 2025 and, just kind of how 2025 is something that y'all have planned 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's exciting to be a part of it. It's exciting to kind of hear a little bit about what's going on, but I appreciate you being here today.
Great. Thanks, Clark. It's good to meet you.